Hello class, we're going to discuss homework number 1. So in Canvas, if you go to our class and then Files, in the Fall 2020 virtual folder, you'll see the syllabus. This week coming up, we're going to begin homework assignment 1 of 2 for the class. And the description of the homework is right here. You're going to make a movie or TV studio logo, and it needs to be animated. And you could use whatever materials you want, and it needs to be between 7 and 15 seconds long. Now I'm going to go over some of the criteria for this in a second. Bear in mind that the final few seconds of the logo, it should be resting on the screen, so it's not a full 10 seconds of animating. Unless you've got things like light leaks and glows and subtle animations, they can continue on. So in Files, Fall 2020 reference files, I've got a folder called Homework 1 Reference. And in here, you can see links to professional animations for logos, as well as independent logo animations and previous students' work. So this can help you troubleshoot or brainstorm or come up with some ideas. So this is a good reference for you to see what some professionals have done, as well as previous students, and help if you've got writer's block or can't come up with some ideas. This is a good reference to go to. You want the logo to be in its resting position for, at least the last few seconds so people have time to read it. I'm going to click New Project and go Composition, New Composition. And this is how you would set up your Homework 1. Let's call it Homework 1. You're going to want 1920 by 1080 square pixels, 24 frame rate, full resolution, and changes to either 10 or 15 seconds long. Now remember, time code is hours, minutes, seconds, frames. So if you want to do 15 seconds, it would be 15.00, or if you're doing 10, it'd be 10.00, and then you click the OK button. And this would be the way to set up in After Effects. If you're more comfortable drawing in Illustrator to get more advanced gradients or detail, work in Illustrator. If you like using textures and brushes in Photoshop, you could do that. It's whatever you're comfortable working with. If you're going to be doing that, I strongly suggest you go to your presets and do HDTV, because that'll be 1920 by 1080. What that means is that any artwork you lay out in Illustrator or Photoshop will be at a 1-to-1 and laid out the same way you're going to see it in After Effects, okay? So if you're more comfortable working in the other Adobe programs to do your drawing and your logo design, do it in the programs you're comfortable with. Just make sure you're working at 1920 by 1080 inside it so that it matches what you're going to see in After Effects and imports more easily. And then later on, I'll show you how to import these files. So that'll be your basic setup. And you're going to want the text to be legible no matter what's going on for at least the last few seconds. Do not fade off your logo. I want it to stay on the screen for the duration. I'm going to show you a little quick tip to help you out along the way. Now remember, I use basic shapes just for speed and ease of use, because I'm teaching you the concepts. I don't want you sitting around watching me draw something complex for 30 minutes when you could just learn the technique and the concept with this simple shape quickly and easily. It's less distracting. I'm going to dive a little bit more into the composition panel for this description so that you can work to the best of your advantage. Right here, this is the magnification of what you're viewing, the composition panel. Basically what the viewer's going to see. Right here, right next to it, is the title safe. You're going to want to turn that on, okay? Here's how title safe works. This first line here, that's the action safe area. And then this next line is the title safe area. And what that means, and I'm going to change my magnification to fit. What that means is if I have type, if it is breaking this second line, remember this first one is the action safe. All important motions must fit within this, or your framing of elements to be seen. You can have some stuff going off to the edge, that's fine. But if it's critical, try and keep it within here for the majority of your animation. This line right here, that's the title safe. If I've got text going over here, and you've seen this a million times if you watch YouTube on TV, people's text and logos and lower thirds and stuff like that, they don't lay them up properly, because even though this is on my screen, this will probably get cut off because it's going past the title safe, alright? And a quick little tip here. So I've got my text selected. If I click on the align and I choose horizontal align, now it's going to be in the horizontal of the screen. If I did that, it'd be the vertical center of the screen as well. And I could just shift and hold down to put it where I want, and I can do the same thing. Now bear in mind, look, my anchor point is not where I want it to be. So I'm going to put this in the center using the pan behind tool and holding down Command or Control to snap it there. Now I can center it. And let's just say I want both of these to be a little bit above. And I'm just putting them there just that they're sitting, you know, somewhere interesting. You don't have to do this, but everything is in its spot. Now, when I say have everything on the screen for like the last few seconds resting, meaning all the motion should stop by the 7-second mark, like it should be in place, all the elements should be there. And I'm going to add one more element just so we can see what's going on here. And the center point is in the middle already, so let's align that like that. Okay, so we'll pretend this is my logo, and this is how I want it to be when it's resting. I've got 3 elements. So first, think about what you want to do, and then plan around using position, scale, rotation, and transparency. So if I'm unsure of what I want to do, I can hold down Shift and select all 3 of these, twirl down the transform, and with all of them selected, if I click position, scale, rotation, and opacity, and I move this up a little bit, you're going to see I've got keyframes for all of them. And what that means is any designing I do right here, this is where they're going to rest, how I want my logo laid out. And then I can work backwards. We've always moved the playhead forward to get our animations, but you could also move it backwards. So if I want the star to come in last, and I want the square to come in first, this is an example of animation hierarchy. You've got your information hierarchy, like what's most important, what's most visually dominant, and the contrast surrounding it and how important it is on the screen. That's basic graphic design, the visual dominance. In animation and motion design, you've got an animation hierarchy as well as the information hierarchy. So that's the order things are coming in to the screen and how they're coming in. So I'm going to want this blue square to come in first, and I'm going to have it come in off the left-hand side. And let's pretend I want that motion to start right here so that the screen's blank for a little bit. So here's my shape, and I'm going to, oops, that was scale, sorry about that. Remember, the left number is side to side, the right number is up and down. You could also click and drag. In here, it's well off the screen. So there's my basic motion, and it's entering in and it's going to stop. I can always adjust the time it stops later on, but this is my basic layout right here. I've already laid it out, my design. So next, I'm going to have my text come in, and let's just say I want that to start coming in here. I'm going to do position and rotation. So since I've already got keyframes, oops, let's see easy. I'm going to click my diamond to put that back. Okay. I made the big mistake. Remember, don't click the stopwatch after you've already clicked it. You'll lose your keyframes. I'm going to do position and rotation. So I'm going to click the empty diamond to create a keyframe there because I've already got one. Alright, so position, I'm going to have this come in from the bottom of the screen. And you can see it's off the screen. And for rotation, I'm going to click my next keyframe button. Rotation, let's just do 2 full circles just for the fun of it. So it's rotating up as it comes into play. And then lastly, I've got this star, and I'm going to have that come in third. I'll just have it come straight in from the top. So if I want that motion to start about here, I'm going to click the empty diamond right there for the position. and move that up from the top, straight up, till it's off the screen. You can always use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out to make sure that everything's off there. So I've got my animation hierarchy. My blue squares coming in, then you see the type entering in a different way. This is contrasting motion. And then finally the stars coming in, and they're all lining up here. Now that I've got my perfect layout here, I can move any keyframes around to have the timing change. Like if I think this square is moving in too slow, I can then grab the keyframes for the position and have it end whenever I want. It's all up to you as the designer. And say I might want this text to come in sooner. I could just slide those down sooner, then scrub through with my playhead and preview it. And then I could say, well, let's have this come in a little bit earlier. Because I'm still going to have the final resting logos, and they're going to line up however I want, and I can change how that ends by just moving them. They're still going to line up in the same way, they're just getting there at a different amount of time. That's an example of working backwards. And then to just be neat and clean, I could delete the keyframes for what I didn't animate by hitting the backspace key, and then selecting my layer and hitting the U key to free up some visual space. I didn't use this, so I'm going to turn that off. And I didn't use that, so I'm going to turn that off. There we go. And these were not used either. So hit the U key, and now I've got a lot more space, and there's no confusion because I got rid of all the keyframes I didn't use. So that's a quick example of animation hierarchy and laying things out. Now remember, you're going to want to ease your keyframes to get better motion. So I have them all selected. I right-clicked, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And then you can go in, make sure they're selected, then go into your speed graph and change the velocity in and out. Dragging further away, it'll go slower into here. And if I drag towards the keyframe, it's going faster out of it or faster into it. It's all in which direction you're going. And remember, don't move the keyframes, the yellow squares. If you move them up and down, it's changing the amount of what's happening, not the speeding of it. Okay? So that'll give you your custom motion. See, now it's coming to a gradual stop, speeding out and then slowing into it. And you could just adjust whatever you want, like the rotation. I can go in and adjust the speed graph for that. Let's say I want to have it go very fast into it and slower out of it. Let's see how that changes the animation. And remember, you can move the render bar so you can render faster, and you could also drop down your preview resolution so that your computer can work a little bit faster as well. Those are little tips and tricks to pick up speed while you're learning how to animate. I'm going to hit the spacebar to preview it. So all three of those have different amounts of velocity. I'm just demonstrating how you can have things come in at different times in different orders, and working backwards, they're going to line up the way that you want them to. Now, let's pretend I've got something happening here. Let's say with this star, there's a glow on it. So I go to my effects, glow, and I'm going to quickly go through and make some changes. Later on, we're going to tackle light effects and changing the bits per channel and expressions, but I'm doing this just to demonstrate something. So I'm going to move my render bar back to the 10-second mark. I'm going to add a quick expression to this glow effect. Now I'm going to play that back, and let me increase my resolution to get a better preview of what the glow is going to look like. I'm giving a gradient overlay to the star. We'll cover this later on, don't worry, we're going to get to all of it, just so I can see the glow a little bit better. Okay, now we're going to preview it hitting the space bar. And like I said, don't worry, we're going to cover all this later on. I'm just giving a quick demonstration of subtle animation that's adding some life to it after it comes into place with the logo resting. So what you're going to see here is some subtle motion giving life to the logo after it stopped moving. And this is great to do, just little considerations. Now watch what happens here now that it's done previewing. See, there's some flickering of the star even though the rest of the logo stopped moving. That's great. You can have life going on in your logo after it stopped moving and it's going to look great. Just make sure it's legible and it's resting on the screen for a few seconds for the viewer to take it all in. Even with those subtle little bits of life added to it afterwards, that's perfectly fine and well encouraged. And if you want effects, let me hit the U key to start at a certain part and you're having trouble with it. Like, let's say I want my text to start flickering. I can duplicate my type layer by going Edit, Split Layer, or Command Shift D or Control Shift D, and it'll split it where the playhead is. So this way, if I put an effect on it, it won't happen until it hits that part of the playhead. I'll do a quick example with these text presets. We're going to dive into all this later on. Let's do Broadway. And you're going to see that effect won't happen until the layer split. So now I'm going to have some more subtle life added to my logo as it's resting for the person to see, but there's still some subtle things going on, keeping some interest even though the pieces have already moved into their final resting position. So these are just some considerations to think. You can still give life to things without making it distracting. Now obviously you'll do something more complex. I'm just showing you information hierarchy and animation hierarchy and just showing you how to work backwards so everything lines up how you want it to look like in your final logo. Remember, motion design is graphic design, but also adding in the elements of time and space. So 10 to 15 seconds long, and you want your composition settings to be 1920 by 1080, square pixels, 24 frame, and your duration to be either 10 seconds or 15 seconds. And remember to have the thing come in and have a few seconds of it resting so it can be taken in and read and it's legible. And make sure everything fits within the title safe area for the text. And you can still have some life to it after it's moved into position just to give some interest for those final few seconds. That's all perfectly well and good. So I'll be going on to this week's virtual lecture next. And I hope you have fun creating and reach out to me. Your Google Drive folders are already up for you to put your artwork in. If you're doing Illustrator or Photoshop, make sure you have all the layers and your artwork and your project file so I can open everything up successfully. It's the same as doing web design or print design. I need all the files you incorporate in order to see your projects properly. Happy animating!